"I paid for this seat." 4 words. That's all Daniel Harper said. 4 words that made a flight attendant freeze, a billionaire go quiet, and an entire business-class cabin hold its breath. They wanted him gone. A tired, wrinkled single father who didn't look like he belonged. They called security. They threatened him. They made him feel like nothing. But what nobody on that plane knew, not the VIP, not the crew, not the 180 passengers settling into their seats, was that the man they were trying to remove was about to save every single one of their lives. Drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that bell, because you don't want to miss what happens next. Daniel Harper hadn't slept in 31 hours. He stood in the boarding line at gate B7, ticket in one hand, phone in the other. The phone screen showed a text from his lawyer. 4 words that had kept him awake through 2 connecting flights and a 6-hour layover. Don't miss this flight. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Because in 48 hours, a judge in London was going to decide whether Daniel's 9-year-old daughter, Lily, would stay with him or be relocated permanently to another country with her mother. That was the only reason he was here. Not vacation, not business, not some reward he'd given himself. This was survival. The legal kind. The kind where you either show up or you lose everything. He tucked the phone into his jacket pocket and shuffled forward with the line. The woman at the gate scanned his boarding pass and glanced at him for a half-second too long. He noticed. He always noticed. He was used to it. The look people gave when a man like him showed up in the wrong line. "Business class, seat 14C. Enjoy your flight, sir." She said it politely, but there was a slight lift at the end, like a question mark, like she wasn't sure he was supposed to be there. Daniel nodded and walked down the jetway. He'd earned that seat. Not with a corporate card, not with frequent flyer miles, not with some last-minute upgrade. He'd earned it with 14-hour shifts at the electrical plant, with overtime he'd begged for, with weekends he gave up so the money could go somewhere that mattered. $5,200. That's what the ticket cost. Round trip, business class, because the only available economy seats would have gotten him to London 6 hours after the hearing started. And missing it meant a default judgment. So he paid. He emptied what was left in his savings after the lawyer's retainer. He told himself it was worth it. He told himself Lily was worth it. She was. He found row 14 and slid into the window seat. The leather was cool against his back. The legroom felt almost absurd. He leaned his head against the window and closed his eyes. Just for a moment. Around him, business class filled up with the kind of people who flew this way all the time. Suits that fit. Watches that cost more than his truck. Cologne that didn't come from a drugstore shelf. They moved with ease, like the cabin was their living room. Daniel sat still. He didn't touch the menu. Didn't adjust the seat. Didn't flag down the attendant for a pre-departure drink. He just sat there and tried to breathe. His phone buzzed again. Another text from his lawyer, Rebecca Sloan. Custody cases like this hinge on showing up. The judge needs to see you're the one fighting. If her mother's legal team can argue you didn't prioritize the hearing, it's over. He typed back, "I'm on the plane. I'll be there." Then he put the phone on airplane mode and exhaled slowly. He thought about Lily, about the way she laughed when he burned pancakes on Sunday mornings, about how she'd started reading chapter books out loud to him at night. Not because she needed to, but because she knew he liked listening. About the drawings she'd taped to the refrigerator last week. 2 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one small. Underneath, in purple crayon, "Me and Dad." He pressed his palm against his chest and held it there. He wasn't going to lose her. Not today. Not ever. The cabin doors closed. The captain came on the intercom. Standard greeting. Weather update. Estimated flight time, 7 hours and 20 minutes. A smooth ride expected over the Atlantic. Daniel let the words wash over him without really hearing them. He was already doing the math in his head. Landed Heathrow at 6:40 in the morning, local time. Take the express train into London. Meet Rebecca at her office by 8:30. Review documents. Walk into the courtroom at 10. It was tight, but it was doable, as long as nothing went wrong. The seatbelt sign came on. The aircraft began to push back from the gate. And then she appeared. A flight attendant, mid-40s, dark hair pulled tight. Name tag, Karen Mitchell. She walked down the aisle with purpose, scanning seat numbers until her eyes landed on Daniel. She stopped. "Mr. Harper?" Daniel looked up. "Yes?" She smiled. It was the kind of smile that had been rehearsed, professional, controlled, empty. "I'm sorry to bother you, sir. We have a small situation. One of our guests has been assigned to this row, and there's been a seating conflict. Would you mind relocating to another seat so we can accommodate him?" Daniel blinked. "Relocating where?" "We have availability in economy. It would just be for this flight. We'd be happy to offer you complimentary miles for the inconvenience." He stared at her. "You want me to give up my business class seat and move to economy?" "It's just a request, sir. We're trying to resolve a boarding issue as quickly as I paid $5,000 for this seat." She paused. The smile flickered. "I understand, sir, and we truly appreciate your flexibility. But this particular guest is a priority passenger, and—" "Priority how?" She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. "He's a valued member of our executive loyalty program, and—" "So he didn't book a seat in business class, but you want to give him mine?" Her jaw tightened. "Sir, I'm simply asking if you'd be willing to—" "No." The word sat between them like a wall. She straightened her posture. "Mr. Harper, I understand this is frustrating, but I've encouraged you to consider the offer. The miles we're providing are quite generous, and—" "I don't need miles. I need this seat. I have a legal obligation in London tomorrow morning, and I booked this flight specifically because it's the only one that gets me there in time." "I appreciate that, sir. But is there a written policy that says a paying passenger can be moved to accommodate someone else after boarding?" She didn't answer. "Is there?" he repeated. Her eyes darted toward the front of the cabin, toward someone Daniel couldn't see yet. "Let me speak with the lead attendant," she said. "I'll be right back." She turned and walked briskly up the aisle. Daniel's heart was hammering, not from anger, from something deeper. Something old. He'd spent his whole life being the guy people looked past, the guy who got talked over in meetings, the guy whose ideas got credited to someone else, the guy who showed up early, stayed late, and never got thanked. And every time, he'd done the polite thing. He'd moved. He'd stepped aside. He'd swallowed whatever he was feeling and told himself it didn't matter. But this time, it did matter. Because Lily was on the other end of this flight, and if he got bumped to a later departure, if he missed the hearing by even an hour, his ex-wife's attorneys would use it. They'd frame it as negligence, as proof that he wasn't committed, as a reason to take his daughter away. So no, he wasn't moving. Not today. 2 minutes passed, then 3, then 5. The cabin had gone quiet in a way that felt deliberate. The other passengers in business class had noticed. Some pretended to read. Others glanced sideways. A woman across the aisle whispered something to her husband, who shook his head slightly and looked away. Daniel felt their eyes. He felt the weight of their assumptions. He knew what they saw. A man in a wrinkled jacket, rough hands, no briefcase, no laptop, no air of authority. They saw someone who didn't belong. And then the VIP arrived. He came down the aisle like he owned it. Tall, tanned, silver-haired, navy blazer, no tie. The kind of man who walked into rooms and expected them to rearrange. His name was Grant Alcott, 56 years old, founder and managing partner of Alcott Ventures, a tech investment firm that had backed 3 of the biggest IPOs in the last decade. Forbes had profiled him twice. He had a verified checkmark on every platform. He had a reputation for being brilliant, ruthless, and absolutely certain that the world owed him convenience. And right now, the world owed him seat 14A. He stopped at row 14 and looked at Daniel the way you'd look at a coat someone left on your chair. "This is my row," he said. Not to Daniel, to Karen Mitchell, who had reappeared behind him. "Yes, Mr. Alcott, we're working on resolving the situation." "What situation?" He looked at Daniel. "Who is this?" Daniel met his gaze. "I'm the person sitting in the seat I paid for." Alcott's expression didn't change. He turned back to Karen. "I was told this row would be cleared." "We made the request, sir. The passenger has declined." "Declined?" Alcott said it like the word was foreign, like he'd never heard it used in reference to himself. He looked at Daniel again, longer this time, taking inventory. The jacket, the hands, the exhaustion in his face. "Listen," Alcott said, and his voice dropped to something that was meant to sound reasonable, but carried the weight of a man who wasn't used to being told no. "I don't know what your situation is, and I'm sure you're a perfectly fine person. But I fly this route 8 times a year. I have meetings in London that affect thousands of jobs. I need the space, the quiet, and the window. So let's make this easy. Take the upgrade offer, move to the back, and everyone's happy." Daniel looked at him. "Everyone except me." "Come on, man, it's just a seat." "Then take a different one." Alcott's nostrils flared, just slightly, but enough. He turned sharply to Karen. "Get your supervisor." "Mr. Alcott, Now." Karen disappeared again. Alcott didn't sit down. He stood in the aisle, arms folded, blocking the path. A silent power move, a way of saying, "I'm not going anywhere, and neither is this problem, until it's solved the way I want it solved." Daniel didn't look at him. He looked straight ahead. His hands were steady, but his pulse was racing. A minute later, a new face appeared. Older, more senior. Name tag read, Thomas Pruitt, Senior Cabin Lead. "Good evening, gentlemen. I understand there's a disagreement about seating?" "There's no disagreement," Alcott said. "There's a passenger in a seat that was supposed to be available for me. Fix it." Pruitt looked at Daniel. "Sir, I apologize for the confusion. We'd like to offer you a seat in our premium economy section, along with a full refund of the fare difference and 10,000 bonus miles." Daniel shook his head slowly. "I appreciate that, but I'm not moving." "Sir, is there a regulation that allows you to forcibly relocate a passenger who has a confirmed paid ticket in their assigned seat?" Pruitt hesitated. "Because if there is," Daniel continued, "I'd like you to cite it, and I'd like it in writing, and I'd like the names of every crew member involved in this request, because my lawyer is going to want them." The cabin went dead silent. Alcott stared at him. "You going to lawyer up over an airplane seat?" Daniel turned to face him, and when he spoke, his voice was calm, low, controlled, but there was iron underneath it. "Mr. Alcott, I'm flying to London for a custody hearing. My daughter is 9 years old. If I miss that hearing, I could lose her. I worked 14-hour days for 4 months to pay for this ticket. I haven't slept in 31 hours. I haven't eaten since yesterday. And I am not giving up this seat because someone more important than me decided he wanted it. He paused.
So with all due respect, sir, sit somewhere else. The silence that followed was the loudest thing on the plane. Alcott's face cycled through three emotions in rapid succession: surprise, offense, and then something cold, something that looked like calculation. He leaned down, close enough that Daniel could smell the bourbon on his breath. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "I know people at this airline. Senior people. You're going to wish you'd taken the deal." Daniel didn't flinch. "Maybe, but I'll still have my seat." Alcott straightened up. He looked at Pruitt. "I want this man removed." Pruitt swallowed. "Mr. Alcott, under current regulations, we can't remove a passenger who—" "Then call the captain." Pruitt looked like a man standing between two oncoming trains. He nodded slowly, turned, and walked toward the cockpit. Alcott remained standing in the aisle, jaw clenched, radiating the specific kind of fury that comes from a man who has never been told no and has absolutely no idea what to do with it. Around them, 180 passengers sat in charged silence. Some watched openly now. Others typed furiously on their phones, capturing the scene before the crew enforced airplane mode. Daniel sat still, hands on his knees, eyes forward. He thought about Lily, about the drawing on the refrigerator, about two stick figures holding hands. And he waited. 3 minutes later, Pruitt returned from the cockpit with a look on his face that said everything. He walked to Alcott and spoke in a low voice. "Sir, the captain has reviewed the situation. Mr. Harper has a confirmed booking. We cannot compel him to move. I apologize for the inconvenience, but I'll need to seat you in 16D. It's also business class. Aisle seat." Alcott stared at him. "You're joking." "I'm not, sir." The moment stretched. Alcott grabbed his bag from the overhead bin with more force than necessary. He looked at Daniel one last time. There was something in his eyes. Not defeat exactly, but the specific resentment of a man who just lost a fight he thought was already over. He walked 2 rows back and dropped into 16D without another word. Karen Mitchell passed by Daniel's row without looking at him. Pruitt gave him a brief, almost imperceptible nod before returning to his station. Daniel exhaled. His hands were shaking now, not from fear, from the adrenaline dump of standing his ground in a room full of people who expected him to fold. He leaned back against the headrest and closed his eyes. He'd won the seat, but the flight was far from over. Because as the aircraft began its taxi toward the runway, Daniel Harper's attention shifted from the cabin to the window. And what he saw there, faint, almost invisible in the glow of the runway lights, was about to change everything. A thin, dark line running along the underside of the left wing. Liquid, moving slowly, catching the light. Daniel sat up straight. His exhaustion vanished. He pressed his face to the glass and looked again, and his blood went cold. Daniel's fingers gripped the armrest so hard his knuckles turned white. He blinked, looked again, told himself it was water, condensation, a trick of the runway lights bouncing off wet tarmac. But it wasn't. The liquid was dark, not the clear shimmer of water catching light. This was something heavier, something with color, a reddish amber tone that spread in a slow, deliberate trail along the underside of the wing, creeping toward the trailing edge like a wound that hadn't been noticed. Daniel knew that color. He knew it the way a man knows the tools of his trade, the way muscle memory outlasts thought. 22 years working in industrial electrical systems, 14 of those years spent inside manufacturing plants, where hydraulic presses,
actuator lines, and pressurized systems were as common as coffee machines. He'd seen hydraulic fluid leak 100 times. He'd seen what happened when people ignored it. Once, at the plant in Dayton, a press operator had reported a slow drip in a hydraulic line. The shift supervisor told him to flag it for the morning crew. By morning, the line had ruptured under pressure. The press arm dropped without warning. 2 men were hospitalized. 1 lost 3 fingers. Daniel never forgot that. He never forgot the color of the fluid on the concrete floor. Reddish amber. Just like this. He pressed the call button above his seat. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. Held it. 15 seconds passed. 20. The cabin crew was busy with final preparations. Overhead bins were being closed. Seatbelt checks were underway. The aircraft was still taxiing, picking up speed as it approached the runway queue.
Daniel unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up. Immediately, Karen Mitchell appeared from the forward galley, her expression shifting from professional calm to sharp disapproval. "Sir, the seatbelt sign is on. I need you to take your seat." "I need to speak to the captain." She stopped mid-stride. "Excuse me?" "There's fluid leaking from the left wing. I can see it from my window. It's not water. I need to speak to the captain, right now." Karen's eyes narrowed. She glanced toward the window, then back at Daniel. Her face carried the unmistakable expression of someone who had already categorized him. The difficult passenger from the seating dispute. The man who wouldn't move. The man who threatened lawyers. Now he was causing more trouble. "Mr. Harper, I assure you, our aircraft undergoes a thorough inspection before every flight. What you're seeing is most likely condensation from the air conditioning system. It's perfectly normal." "It's not condensation." "Sir, please sit down. Have you looked at it?" "I don't need to look at it. Your ground crew missed it." Her smile disappeared entirely. "Mr. Harper, sit down." He didn't move. "I've worked around hydraulic systems for over 20 years. That fluid is not water. It's not condensation. It's leaking from somewhere near the actuator housing. And if this aircraft takes off with a compromised hydraulic line, you're looking at partial or complete loss of flight control surfaces." Karen stared at him. Her lips parted, then closed. "Do you understand what I'm saying?" Daniel asked. "Ailerons, flaps, spoilers. If the hydraulic pressure drops mid-flight over the Atlantic, the pilots won't be able to control the aircraft." For the first time, something flickered behind her eyes. Not belief exactly, but doubt. The kind of doubt that makes a person pause even when they don't want to. "Stay here," she said. "Do not move from this spot." She turned and walked quickly toward the front galley. Daniel watched her lean into the intercom. He couldn't hear what she said, but he saw her gesturing toward the left side of the plane. He saw her shake her head. He saw her pause, listen, then nod. She came back. "The captain says it's been noted, and it's within normal parameters. Please return to your seat." "Within normal parameters?" Daniel's voice rose slightly. Not shouting, but firm enough that the passengers nearby turned their heads. "Did he actually look at it, or did he take your word for it?" "Mr. Harper, did anyone walk out there and physically inspect the left wing in the last 10 minutes? She didn't answer. "That's what I thought. Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time to return to your seat. If you refuse, I will be forced to involve security, and you will be removed from this aircraft." Daniel almost laughed. The irony hit him like a freight train. 10 minutes ago, they wanted him to give up his seat. Now they wanted him to sit in it and be quiet. Either way, the message was the same. Stop being a problem. But he wasn't being a problem. He was trying to prevent one. He looked Karen in the eye. "Go ahead. Call security. Call whoever you want. But I'm telling you right now, that leak is real. And if this plane takes off, every person on board is at risk, including you." His voice carried. He hadn't intended it to, but the acoustics of the cabin made sure of it. Heads turned. Whispers started. A man in row 12 pulled out his phone and aimed it toward Daniel before a crew member waved him off. From 2 rows back, Grant Alcott's voice cut through the murmur. "Oh, for God's sake, what is it now?" Daniel ignored him. Alcott didn't take well to being ignored. He unbuckled his seatbelt and stood, stepping into the aisle with the energy of a man who had decided he was going to end this personally.
"Are you serious right now?" Alcott said, loud enough for the entire business class cabin to hear. "First the seat, now this? You're holding up an entire flight because you think you saw something out the window?"
Daniel turned to face him. "I didn't think I saw something. I saw it." "You're an electrician, not a pilot. Sit down and let the professionals handle it." The professionals missed it. Alcott took a step closer. "You know what I think? I think you're still upset about the seat. I think this is your way of making a point, and I think everyone on this plane is tired of your act." Daniel felt the heat rise in his chest. He could feel the eyes of 60 business class passengers on him. He could feel the judgment, the assumptions, the quiet consensus forming. This man is the problem. But he held steady. Because this wasn't about ego. This wasn't about pride or the seat or Grant Alcott or being right. This was about what he saw through that window. And what he saw scared him. "Mr. Alcott," Daniel said quietly, "I don't care what you think about me. I don't care if every person on this plane thinks I'm crazy. But I have seen hydraulic fluid leak before. I've seen what happens when it's ignored, and I'm not going to sit quietly and hope for the best while this aircraft takes off with a potential failure in the flight control system." "That's not your call to make." "Then whose call is it? Because the crew won't look, and the captain hasn't left the cockpit." Alcott opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Thomas Pruitt appeared again. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in the last 15 minutes. "Gentlemen, please, both of you need to take your seats immediately. We are second in line for takeoff." Daniel turned to him. "Mr. Pruitt, I am asking you, not telling you, asking you, to relay one thing to the captain. Tell him there is a visible fluid trail along the underside of the left wing, originating from the area near the inboard actuator housing. Tell him it is not condensation. Tell him it is consistent with hydraulic fluid. And tell him that if he doesn't stop this aircraft and request a ground inspection, he is taking off with an uninspected anomaly on a transatlantic flight." Pruitt stared at him. "That's all I'm asking," Daniel said. "If I'm wrong, we lose 10 minutes. If I'm right, we save 180 lives." The cabin went silent again. That particular kind of silence that happens when everyone is listening, but no one wants to be caught doing it. Pruitt swallowed hard. His eyes moved to the window. He took 1 step, 2 steps, and leaned across the empty seat beside Daniel to look out. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he straightened up. His face had changed. The professional composure was still there, but underneath it was something raw, something that looked a lot like fear. "Stay here," he said. And this time his voice was different, urgent, low. "Everyone, stay in your seats." He moved fast, not walking, almost running toward the cockpit. He knocked twice, hard, and the door opened from inside. He disappeared through it. The cabin erupted in whispers. "What did he see? Is something wrong with the plane? What's happening?" Alcott stood in the aisle, arms crossed, but his posture had shifted. The arrogance was still there, but it was thinner now. Underneath it, Daniel could see uncertainty. The kind of uncertainty that comes when a man starts to wonder if he might be on the wrong side of something important. Karen Mitchell moved through the cabin, palms up, voice steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. There's a brief delay while the flight crew conducts a routine check. We'll be underway shortly." But it wasn't routine. Daniel could tell from the way she said it. The emphasis was too heavy. The smile was too tight. She was performing, and she knew it. 30 seconds later, the aircraft stopped moving. The engines didn't shut down. The lights didn't change. But the plane stopped. Right there, on the taxiway, second in line for departure, with the runway lights stretching out ahead of them like a promise that had just been put on hold. Pruitt came back out of the cockpit. He walked straight to Daniel. "The captain is requesting a ground inspection. We're returning to the gate." Daniel exhaled, a long, slow breath that felt like it came from somewhere deeper than his lungs, from somewhere in his chest that had been wound tight for the last 15 minutes. "Thank you," he said. Pruitt nodded, but he didn't walk away immediately. He leaned in close enough that only Daniel could hear. "How did you know?" Daniel looked at him. "Because I've seen it before. And last time, nobody listened." Pruitt held his gaze for a moment. Then he turned and addressed the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has decided to return to the gate for an additional safety inspection. This is purely precautionary. We ask for your patience and cooperation." The groans were immediate. A woman in row 9 threw her hands up. "You've got to be kidding me!" A man behind her muttered, "I have a connection in London. This is going to cost me the meeting." Someone else said, loud enough to be heard 3 rows away, "This is because of that guy, isn't it? The one who wouldn't give up his seat?" Daniel felt every word like a small stone hitting his back. He didn't turn around. He didn't respond. He sat in 14C, hands on his knees, and watched through the window as the aircraft slowly reversed course and began the long taxi back to the gate. Alcott dropped back into 16D. He pulled out his phone the moment the aircraft stopped on the taxiway and jabbed at it furiously, even though they were still supposed to be in airplane mode. He didn't say anything to Daniel, but his silence was louder than anything he'd said all night. Karen Mitchell walked past without acknowledging him. The other attendants did the same. It was as if Daniel had become invisible. Not in the way he was used to, where people looked past him because they didn't think he mattered, but in a new way, where people avoided him because they didn't know what to think. The aircraft reached the gate. The jetway connected. The captain came on the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Williams. We've returned to the gate to allow our ground maintenance team to inspect a concern flagged by the flight crew. We understand this is inconvenient, and we appreciate your patience. We'll provide an update as soon as possible." A concern flagged by the flight crew. Not by a passenger, by the flight crew. Daniel noticed the phrasing. He didn't blame them. He understood. It was easier to say the crew caught something than to admit a passenger in a wrinkled jacket had seen what the professionals missed. The forward cabin door opened. 2 ground engineers in high-visibility vests boarded, spoke briefly with Pruitt, and then exited through the door and down the stairs to the tarmac. Daniel watched from his window. He could see them now, 2 figures in orange vests walking beneath the left wing with flashlights. They moved slowly, methodically. One crouched down. The other directed a light upward along the wing's underside. They stopped. Both of them, at the same time, crouching beneath the wing in a spot roughly where Daniel had seen the fluid trail begin. One of them stood up and spoke into a radio. The other pulled out a rag and touched it to the surface of the wing, then held it up to the light. Even from inside the cabin, Daniel could see the color on the rag. Reddish amber. His heart pounded. Not from vindication, not from relief. From the cold, simple understanding of what would have happened if no one had listened.
If the crew had brushed him off completely, if Pruitt hadn't leaned across and looked out that window, they would have taken off, climbed to 37,000 feet, crossed over the open Atlantic, and somewhere over that black water, with nothing below them but ocean and nothing around them but night, the hydraulic pressure would have dropped. The flight control surfaces would have gone sluggish, then unresponsive. The pilots would have fought. They would have tried every procedure in the book, and it might not have been enough. 5 more minutes passed, then 10, then 20. The cabin grew restless. Passengers shifted in their seats. Conversations grew louder. The energy in the plane had changed from annoyance to something else, something quieter, something that tasted like anxiety. Because by now, everyone had noticed that the engineers were still under the wing, that more people had joined them, that the flashlights were still moving. And no one was saying it was routine anymore. Pruitt came back through the cabin one more time. He didn't stop at Daniel's row. He went all the way to the back, speaking to passengers in a calm, measured voice. But Daniel noticed his hands. They were clasped behind his back, and his fingers were interlocked so tightly that his knuckles were pale. Karen Mitchell stood in the forward galley, arms folded, staring at the floor. She hadn't spoken to Daniel since the plane stopped. She hadn't spoken to anyone. She just stood there, perfectly still, as if she were replaying the last 30 minutes in her head and arriving at a conclusion she didn't want to reach. Daniel looked out the window one more time. A third engineer had arrived. This one carried a clipboard and was crouched directly beneath the actuator housing, pointing at something and shaking his head. Then the cabin lights brightened. The captain's voice came over the intercom again. But this time, the tone was different. The casual authority was gone. In its place was something measured, careful, and unmistakably serious. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Williams again. Our ground maintenance team has identified a mechanical concern that requires further evaluation. For the safety of everyone on board, we've made the decision to take this aircraft out of service. The flight is canceled. The cabin erupted. Voices overlapped. Hands shot up. The woman in row 9 was already on her feet. A man near the back shouted something about compensation. Alcott slammed his tray table shut with a crack that echoed through the cabin. But Daniel didn't move. He sat in 14C, staring out at the wing, watching the engineers work. And for the first time in 31 hours, his hands stopped shaking. The announcement hit the cabin like a shockwave, and then everything moved at once. Passengers surged out of their seats. Overhead bins popped open. Bags came down. Voices climbed over each other in a rising wall of frustration, confusion, and fear. A woman 3 rows ahead of Daniel clutched her phone to her chest and started crying quietly. A businessman across the aisle was already dialing, already talking, already explaining to someone on the other end that no, he wasn't going to make the morning session, that the flight was canceled, that he didn't know when he'd get out. The crew tried to maintain order. Karen Mitchell stood at the front of the cabin with both palms raised, repeating the same phrase over and over like a mantra that had stopped working. Please remain calm. Please remain in your seats. Rebooking information will be provided at the gate. Nobody was listening. Daniel sat still. His mind wasn't on the chaos around him. It was on the math. The cold, practical, unforgiving math of what this cancellation meant for his custody hearing. The flight was supposed to land at Heathrow at 6:40 in the morning. The hearing was at 10. Even with the cancellation, if the airline could get him on another flight within the next 2 or 3 hours, he might still make it. Tight, but possible. But if they couldn't, if the next available flight didn't get him to London until tomorrow afternoon, if there were no seats, no alternatives, no way across the Atlantic in time,
then it was over. Rebecca Sloan had been very clear about that. A default judgment. A ruling made without him in the room. His ex-wife's legal team painting his absence as proof that he didn't care enough to show up. He pulled out his phone and turned it on. 3 missed calls from Rebecca. 1 voicemail. He didn't listen to it. He already knew what it would say. He typed a text instead.
Flight canceled. Mechanical issue. Trying to rebook. I'll keep you posted. Her response came back in 8 seconds. Daniel, you have to be in that courtroom. Call me the second you know your new flight.
He stared at the screen. Then he put the phone in his pocket and stood up. The aisle was clogged with passengers pulling bags, arguing with crew members, and trying to push toward the exit. Daniel didn't push. He waited. He let the crowd thin. And then he walked forward, against the flow, toward the cockpit. Pruitt was standing just outside the cockpit door, speaking in a low voice to another crew member. He saw Daniel approaching and held up a hand. "Mr. Harper, I know you have questions. Everyone does. But right now I need to get to London," Daniel said. "Tonight. Is there another flight?" Pruitt's expression softened. Just barely. Just enough to show that somewhere underneath the uniform and the protocol, there was a human being who understood what was at stake. "The rebooking desk at the gate will have options. That's the fastest way to—" "Mr. Pruitt, you know what happened here tonight. You know what I did. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking you, one person to another, to help me find a way to get on a plane to London before morning." Pruitt looked at him for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a card, and wrote something on the back. "Go to the rebooking counter. Ask for a supervisor named Janet Reese. Give her this. Tell her I sent you." Daniel took the card. "Thank you." "Mr. Harper." Pruitt's voice caught him as he turned. "What you did tonight, I want you to know. I'm sorry we didn't listen sooner." Daniel nodded once. Then he walked off the plane. The gate area was already a disaster. 100 Navy passengers, all of them displaced, all of them angry, all of them competing for a limited number of seats on a limited number of flights. The rebooking counter had a line that stretched halfway down the terminal. Families sat on the floor with sleeping children draped across their laps. Business travelers paced back and forth, phones pressed to their ears, voices sharp with urgency. Daniel walked past the line. He found the supervisor desk off to the side, behind a partition. A woman with short gray hair and reading glasses was typing rapidly on a computer. Her name tag read, Janet Reese. "Excuse me, Thomas Pruitt asked me to speak with you." He held out the card. She took it, read the back, and looked up at him over her glasses. "You're the passenger who flagged the hydraulic issue?" "Yes, ma'am." She studied him for a moment. Then she turned back to her screen and started typing. "The next direct flight to Heathrow departs at 11:50 tonight. It's full. Completely full. Economy, premium, business, all of it." She kept typing. "There's a connecting flight through Amsterdam that departs at 12:15. Gets you into Heathrow at 9:40 local time." Daniel did the math. 9:40. The hearing was at 10. Heathrow to central London was at least 45 minutes on the express. That left him negative minutes. It was impossible. "Is there anything earlier?" "Let me check the partner airlines." She typed for another 30 seconds. "There's a flight on a partner carrier departing at 10:30 tonight. Arrives Heathrow at 6:10 in the morning. But it's economy only, and there's 1 seat left." "I'll take it." "The fare difference from your original business class ticket would result in a refund. But the rebooking fee—" "I don't care about the fee. I don't care about the refund. Just put me on that plane." Janet Reese looked at him again. Something in her expression shifted. It was the look of someone who had spent 20 years behind an airline counter and had learned to tell the difference between a passenger who was angry about inconvenience and a passenger who was fighting for something that actually mattered. "Give me 2 minutes," she said. She picked up a phone, spoke quietly, typed some more, spoke again, and then hung up. She printed a boarding pass and slid it across the counter. "Gate C-22. Boarding starts in 40 minutes. You'll need to move quickly." Daniel took the boarding pass. His hand was trembling. Not from fear or exhaustion this time. From relief so sharp it almost hurt. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you so much." "Go," she said. And then, just as he turned, she added, "Mr. Harper, my daughter went through a custody battle 3 years ago. Her ex tried to take her kids to another state. She fought like hell, and she won." Janet paused. "You fight like hell too." He couldn't speak. He nodded, pressed his lips together, and walked away fast before the emotion cracked through. He moved through the terminal at a half jog, weaving between travelers and luggage carts and slow-moving families. Gate C-22 was on the other side of the airport. He had 40 minutes. He could make it. His phone buzzed. Rebecca. "Got a flight. Landing at 6:10. I'll be at your office by 8. "Thank God. I'll have everything ready. Daniel, listen to me. Get some sleep on that plane. You need to be sharp tomorrow." "I will." He wouldn't. He knew that. But he said it anyway. He was halfway to Gate C-22, cutting through the food court, when a voice stopped him. "Mr. Harper?" He turned. Grant Alcott was standing near a coffee kiosk, leather bag slung over one shoulder, phone in hand. He looked different than he had on the plane. The blazer was rumpled. The silver hair was slightly out of place. The confidence that had radiated off him like heat was muted now, replaced by something Daniel couldn't quite identify. Daniel stopped walking. Every instinct told him to keep moving. He didn't have time for this. He didn't owe this man anything. But something in Alcott's face made him pause. "I heard what they found," Alcott said. "The hydraulic line." Daniel said nothing. "They said it was a significant leak. Said if the plane had taken off, there was a real chance of a control failure over the Atlantic." "That's what I was trying to tell you." Alcott's jaw tightened. He looked away, then back. "I know." Silence stretched between them. Around them, the terminal hummed with the chaos of displaced passengers and delayed flights. But in that small pocket of space near the coffee kiosk, it was just 2 men standing 3 feet apart, dealing with the weight of what had almost happened. "I owe you an apology," Alcott said. Daniel waited. "On the plane, the things I said, the way I handled that." Alcott paused. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully, like a man who wasn't used to apologizing and was building the sentence, one piece at a time. "I was wrong. I was out of line. And I'm sorry." Daniel studied him. He searched for the angle, the calculation, the strategic move. Because men like Alcott didn't apologize without reason. Men like Alcott always had a play. But he didn't see one. What he saw was a man standing in an airport terminal at 10 o'clock at night, looking genuinely shaken, genuinely humbled, and genuinely struggling with the realization that his own arrogance had nearly prevented someone from saving his life. "You could have taken the deal," Alcott continued. "You could have moved to economy. You could have given up that seat and ended up somewhere else on the plane, where you wouldn't have been near that window, where you wouldn't have seen the leak." "I know. And I tried to make that happen. I pushed for it.
I pushed hard.
You did.
Alcott's voice dropped. If you had moved, nobody would have seen it. Would they? Daniel didn't answer. He didn't have to. Alcott ran a hand through his hair. I've been sitting here for the last 20 minutes thinking about that. Thinking about what would have happened. About my wife. My kids. About the fact that I was more concerned about getting a window seat than listening to a man who was trying to keep us alive. He stopped. Swallowed. His composure cracked, just for a second, just enough for Daniel to see the fear underneath. The real, genuine, bone-deep fear of a man who had looked back at a near miss and realized how close he'd come. I've got 3 kids, Alcott said. 2 boys and a girl. 13, 11, and 8. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. I've got 1. A girl. She's 9. The custody hearing. Yeah. Is that where you're heading now? Daniel held up the boarding pass. New flight. Different airline. I'll make it. Alcott nodded. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. He held it out. Daniel looked at it, but didn't take it. I'm not looking for... I know you're not, Alcott said. That's not what this is. I just want you to have my contact information. In case you ever need anything. Legal support, a reference, whatever. No strings. I mean that. Daniel looked at the card, then at Alcott. Then he took it and put it in his pocket. Thank you. Don't thank me. I don't deserve it. Alcott paused. Harper, I've built a career on reading people, on sizing them up in 30 seconds and deciding what they're worth. And tonight, I looked at you and decided you were nobody. I decided you didn't belong. I decided you were less important than me because of what you were wearing and where you work and how tired you looked. He stopped again. His voice had gone quiet, and you turned out to be the most important person on that plane. Daniel felt the words land somewhere deep, not like a compliment, like a truth that had been waiting to be spoken out loud. He didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing that felt honest. I was just the guy who looked out the window. No, Alcott said. You were the guy who refused to stop looking, even when everyone told you to sit down and shut up. That's different. That's the part most people don't have. They stood there for another moment. 2 men from different worlds, separated by money and status and every assumption the world uses to sort people into categories. And for just that moment, none of it mattered. I've got to go, Daniel said. My gate's on the other side of the terminal. Alcott extended his hand. Daniel shook it. Firm. Brief. The way men shake hands when something real has passed between them, and words aren't enough to carry it. Good luck tomorrow, Alcott said, with the hearing. Thanks. Daniel turned and walked. Fast. He didn't look back. The terminal was thinning out now. The rush of displaced passengers had spread across the airport, absorbed into other gates, other flights, other plans hastily remade. Daniel's footsteps echoed on the polished floor as he moved through the corridors, past darkened storefronts and empty seating areas. His body was screaming. 33 hours without sleep. His legs felt heavy. His eyes burned. The adrenaline that had carried him through the confrontation on the plane, and the inspection and the rebooking, was fading now, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness that settled into him like cold water. But he kept walking, because Lily was waiting. Not literally. She didn't know any of this was happening. She was at home with Daniel's mother, probably asleep, probably curled up with the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 3. She didn't know that her father was in an airport 3,000 miles away, running on fumes and fear and a love so fierce it had kept him upright for 33 hours straight. She didn't know. But she was the reason he kept moving. He reached gate C-22 with 12 minutes to spare.
The boarding area was half full. A different airline, a different crew, a different plane. He checked the window instinctively, scanning the wings from inside the terminal. Old habit now. Or maybe new habit. Hard to tell. He found a seat near the window and sat down. His legs thanked him. His back thanked him. His eyes tried to close on their own. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Harper, this is Thomas Pruitt. Janet Reese gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I wanted you to know that the maintenance report came back. The leak was in the primary hydraulic actuator for the left aileron. Significant fluid loss. The engineering team classified it as a high-risk failure point. Their assessment is that if the aircraft had reached cruising altitude, there was a strong probability of partial loss of lateral control." Daniel read it twice. Partial loss of lateral control. Over the Atlantic. At night. With 180 people on board. His hands were shaking again. Not from exhaustion. From the simple, terrible weight of understanding what partial loss of lateral control means at 37,000 feet over open ocean. Another text followed. "The captain asked me to personally thank you. The airline will be reaching out formally, but he wanted you to know that in his professional opinion, your observation tonight prevented a potential catastrophic event." His words, not mine. Daniel stared at the screen. He tried to process it, tried to feel something appropriate. Relief, pride, vindication, something. But all he felt was tired and grateful and overwhelmed by the randomness of it all. The fact that he'd bought a business-class ticket because it was the only flight that got him to London in time. The fact that they'd tried to move him. The fact that he'd refused. The fact that his seat happened to be next to a window that looked directly at the section of wing where the leak was visible. The fact that he happened to know what hydraulic fluid looked like because of 22 years in industrial plants. A chain of small decisions and stubborn refusals that had, by pure chance or something more, put the right eyes in the right place at the right time. He typed back, "Thank you for listening to me, Mr. Pruitt. That's the part that mattered." Then he put his phone away. Boarding was called. Daniel stood, grabbed his bag, and joined the line. Economy seat. Middle row. It didn't matter. Nothing about the seat mattered. All that mattered was that the plane would take off, cross the ocean, and land at Heathrow at 6:10 in the morning. He'd be in Rebecca's office by 8, in the courtroom by 10. And when the judge asked whether Daniel Harper was the kind of father who showed up, who fought, who put his daughter first above everything else, the answer would be sitting right there in that courtroom. Tired, unshaven, running on coffee and willpower, but present, always present. He handed his boarding pass to the gate agent, walked down the jetway, and found his seat. Middle row, economy, between a teenager with headphones and an elderly woman reading a paperback novel. He sat down, buckled in, leaned his head back, and for the first time in 33 hours, Daniel Harper closed his eyes. Not to sleep, not yet. Just to hold still for one moment and let the truth of the night settle over him. The seat they tried to take. The leak no one else saw. The plane that never should have left the ground. The apology from a man who'd never given one before. And somewhere, 3,000 miles ahead of him, a courtroom where a judge would decide the rest of his life. His breathing slowed. His shoulders dropped. The engines spooled up outside, and the aircraft began to move. Daniel kept his eyes closed and let the motion carry him forward. The plane touched down at Heathrow at 6:14 in the morning, 4 minutes behind schedule. Daniel felt the wheels hit the tarmac, and his eyes snapped open like a switch had been thrown. He hadn't slept. Not really. He drifted in and out of something that wasn't quite sleep and wasn't quite consciousness. A gray half-state where his mind kept replaying the same images on a loop. The fluid under the wing. Alcott's face. Karen Mitchell's tight smile. Pruitt leaning across the empty seat to look out the window. And Lily. Always Lily. Her face woven through every other thought, like a thread holding the rest together. He was moving before the seatbelt sign went off. The elderly woman beside him looked up from her paperback and gave him a small, knowing smile. The kind older women give to younger men who look like they're carrying something heavy. He nodded at her and pulled his bag from under the seat. The moment the cabin doors opened, he was in the jetway, walking fast, then faster, then running. He cleared customs in 22 minutes, a small miracle. The officer looked at his passport, looked at his face, and waved him through without a single question. Maybe he looked too exhausted to be suspicious. Maybe he looked like exactly what he was, a father with somewhere urgent to be. He hit the Heathrow Express platform at 6:51. The train left at 6:55. He dropped into a seat, pulled out his phone, and called Rebecca. She picked up on the first ring. "Tell me you're on the ground." "I'm on the ground. Heathrow Express. I'll be at Paddington by 7:15. "Thank God. Okay, listen. I need you at my office by 8, no later. We have to go through the final documents, and there's something new." Daniel's stomach dropped. What kind of new? Catherine's lawyers filed a supplemental motion yesterday afternoon. They're arguing that your work schedule demonstrates an inability to provide consistent daily care. They've submitted your overtime records from the last 6 months. Daniel closed his eyes. His overtime records. The same overtime he'd worked to pay for the lawyer, the ticket, the fight to keep his daughter. They were using it against him. "How bad is it?" he asked. "It's not great, but it's not fatal. I've prepared a counter-argument. The overtime was temporary and directly tied to funding this legal process. It actually demonstrates commitment, not neglect. But I need you sharp, Daniel. I need you calm and articulate in that courtroom."
Can you do that? I haven't slept in almost 40 hours. I know. I can hear it in your voice. There's a shower at my office. Fresh coffee. I'll have everything laid out. You walk in, clean up, we prep for 90 minutes, and we walk into that courtroom ready. Okay? Okay. Daniel? Yeah? You made it. You're here. That already matters more than you know. He hung up and stared out the window as London blurred past. Green fields giving way to brick and concrete and glass. A city waking up around him while he ran on fumes and adrenaline and something deeper than either. He thought about what Rebecca had said. Catherine's lawyers had pulled his overtime records. 6 months of 14-hour shifts. 6 months of missed dinners and early mornings and weekends spent at the plant instead of at home. They'd taken the evidence of his sacrifice and reframed it as evidence of his failure. That was the cruelty of it. Not the legal strategy, the framing. The way the same set of facts could tell 2 completely different stories depending on who was telling them. In one story, Daniel Harper was a father who worked himself to the bone to fight for his daughter. In the other, he was an absent parent who prioritized his job over his child. Same man, same hours, same calloused hands and tired eyes. 2 opposite conclusions. He knew which story Catherine's lawyers would tell. He knew how it would sound in a courtroom. He knew that a judge who didn't know him, who had never seen him make Lily's lunch at 5 in the morning, or braid her hair before school, or sit on the edge of her bed reading stories until she fell asleep, would have to decide which version of Daniel Harper was real, based on paperwork and arguments and the performance of 2 legal teams. It terrified him. The train pulled into Paddington at 7:18. Daniel was off the platform and into a cab within 2 minutes. He gave the driver the address and leaned back, willing the London traffic to cooperate for once in its existence. It didn't. But he made it to Rebecca's office at 7:52, 8 minutes early. Rebecca Sloan was already at her desk. She was a small woman in her early 50s, with sharp eyes and a habit of speaking in clipped, precise sentences that wasted nothing. She'd been practicing family law for 23 years. Daniel's case wasn't her biggest. It wasn't her most complicated. But she told him once, over coffee during their second meeting, that it was the one she cared about most. "You look terrible," she said when he walked in. "Thank you." "Shower's down the hall. There's a clean shirt in the closet. I guessed your size. If it doesn't fit, we'll make it work." He showered in 4 minutes. The hot water hit his skin, and something inside him loosened, just slightly. Not the tension. The tension was permanent now, baked into his muscles and his jaw, and the space between his shoulders. But the fog in his head cleared a little, enough to think, enough to focus. The shirt fit, close enough. He came back into Rebecca's office, looking less like a man who'd been awake for 40 hours, and more like a man who'd been awake for 20. It was an improvement. Rebecca pushed a cup of coffee across the desk and opened a folder. "Okay, here's where we stand. Catherine's team is going to argue 3 things. 1. Your work schedule is incompatible with primary custody. 2. Her relocation to the UK provides Lily with better educational opportunities and family support. 3. Your financial situation is unstable." "My financial situation is unstable because I spent everything I had on this case." "I know, and that's exactly what I'm going to tell the judge. But I need you to say it too, in your own words, without anger, without bitterness. The judge needs to hear from you directly, why you're here and what you've sacrificed to be here." "What do you want me to say?" Rebecca leaned forward. "I want you to tell the truth. Simply, clearly. I want you to tell the judge who Lily is to you. Not in abstractions, not in legal language. Tell the judge about Sunday mornings. Tell the judge about the drawings on the refrigerator. Tell the judge about reading chapter books at night. Tell the judge what your life looks like with your daughter in it, and what it would look like without her." Daniel's throat tightened. "I'm not good at that. Talking about my feelings in front of strangers." "I know you're not. But today you have to be. Because Catherine's lawyers are polished and prepared, and they're going to paint a very convincing picture of a mother who can provide a stable, affluent home in a country with excellent schools and extended family support. And the only thing that can compete with that picture is the truth about who you are as a father. Not on paper, in person." He nodded. He drank the coffee. He listened while Rebecca walked him through the documents, the timeline, the counter-arguments, the likely questions from the judge. She was thorough and relentless, and by 9:30, Daniel felt something that almost resembled preparedness. Not confidence. He was too tired and too honest with himself for confidence. But preparedness. A readiness to walk into that room and say what needed to be said. They took a cab to the courthouse. Neither of them spoke during the ride. Rebecca reviewed notes on her phone. Daniel watched London pass by outside the window and thought about the last time he'd seen Lily. 3 days ago, a Tuesday. He'd dropped her at school, same as always. She'd unbuckled her seatbelt, grabbed her backpack, and then stopped with her hand on the door handle.
"Dad?"
"Yeah, Lil?"
"Are you going somewhere?"
He'd hesitated. He didn't want to lie to her, but he didn't want to scare her either. She knew about the custody situation. Kids always know more than adults think, but he'd tried to shield her from the worst of it.
I have to take a trip for a couple days. Grandma's going to stay with you."
"Is it about me?"
His heart had cracked. Right there in the school drop-off lane, with other cars honking behind him. "It's about making sure we stay together, baby. That's all." She'd looked at him with those eyes, those huge, serious, 9-year-old eyes that saw everything.
"You'll come back?"
Always. She'd nodded, climbed out of the truck, and walked into school without looking back. Not because she didn't care, because she trusted him. Because she believed him when he said, always. And now he was here, 3,000 miles and 40 hours later, sitting in a cab in London, about to walk into a courtroom and fight for the right to keep that promise. They arrived at the courthouse at 9:45. Rebecca led him through security, through a maze of corridors, and into a waiting area outside courtroom 4. Catherine was already there. She sat on a bench across the hall with her lawyer, a tall man in an impeccable gray suit named Jeffrey Hale. Catherine looked different than Daniel remembered. Her hair was shorter. She was thinner. She wore a navy dress and heels, and a pearl necklace that Daniel had never seen before. She looked composed, polished, ready. She glanced up when Daniel walked in. Their eyes met for exactly 1 second. Then she looked away. There had been a time when that face was the center of his world, when he'd loved her so completely that the idea of sitting across a courtroom from her would have seemed like a bad dream. But that was before the arguments that never resolved, before the silence that replaced the fighting. Before she told him one Tuesday evening, while Lily was in the bathtub singing to herself, that she was leaving, that she'd been offered a position in London, that she wanted to take Lily with her. He'd said no. She'd filed. And here they were. Jeffrey Hale leaned over and whispered something to Catherine. She nodded without expression. Rebecca touched Daniel's arm. "Don't look at her. Don't engage. Focus on me and focus on the judge. That's it." "I know." "Daniel, I mean it. Whatever they say in there, whatever they claim about you, you stay calm. You do not react. You wait for your turn, and then you speak. Understood?" "Understood." The courtroom doors opened at 10 sharp. They filed in. Daniel on one side, Catherine on the other. Two people who had once shared a bed, a home, a child, a life, now separated by a wooden table and a gulf of legal paperwork. The judge was a woman. Late 60s, silver hair, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Her name was Justice Eleanor Hargrove, and she had a reputation, according to Rebecca, for being thorough, fair, and deeply skeptical of parents who used children as leverage. "Good morning," Justice Hargrove said. "This is the matter of Harper versus Harper, regarding the custody and residential arrangements for the minor child Lily Ann Harper, age 9. I've reviewed the submissions from both parties. We'll begin with the petitioner." Jeffrey Hale stood. He was good. Daniel could see that immediately. His voice was measured, his arguments clean, his delivery smooth. He painted a picture of Catherine as a devoted mother who had secured a prestigious research position at a London university, who had extended family in the area, who could provide Lily with access to excellent schools, cultural enrichment, and a stable 2-parent home, because Catherine had remarried. A man named James. Daniel had never met him. Hale spoke for 20 minutes. He referenced studies on child development. He cited the educational rankings of the schools Catherine had identified. He presented letters of support from Catherine's colleagues, her new husband's family, and a child psychologist who had evaluated Lily and concluded that she was adaptable and resilient. Adaptable and resilient. as if those were arguments for moving a child away from her father, rather than descriptions of how she'd survived the divorce. Then Hale turned to Daniel. "Your Honor, while we respect Mr. Harper's love for his daughter, the evidence shows a pattern of extended work hours that leave Lily in the care of her paternal grandmother for significant portions of the day. Mr. Harper's financial records indicate ongoing instability. His current living situation, a two-bedroom rental, provides limited space, and his inability to offer the educational and social advantages available in London suggests that the child's best interests are served by granting primary custody to her mother." Daniel's jaw tightened. He felt Rebecca's hand on his arm. Steady. A reminder. Then it was Rebecca's turn. She stood, and she was everything Geoffrey Hale was not. Where he was polished, she was direct. Where he was smooth, she was sharp. She didn't paint a picture. She built a case, brick by brick, with facts that hit like hammer blows. She presented Daniel's complete work history, not just the overtime, the full picture. A man who had been employed continuously for 14 years, who had never missed a child support payment, who had adjusted his schedule after the separation to be home every morning for school drop-off and every evening for dinner, who had taken Lily to every doctor's appointment, every school conference, every dance recital. She presented text messages between Daniel and Lily's teachers showing his active involvement in her education. She presented a letter from Lily's school counselor describing Daniel as exceptionally engaged and attentive. She presented financial records showing that Daniel's overtime was temporary and specifically tied to funding the custody process. "Your Honor," Rebecca said, "Mr. Harper is not a perfect man. He's not wealthy. He doesn't have a prestigious position or a large house or family connections in London. What he has is a relationship with his daughter that is the foundation of her emotional world. Lily Harper is not adaptable and resilient because she doesn't need her father. She is adaptable and resilient because her father has given her the security to be those things." Daniel felt something break loose inside him. Not sadness. Something bigger than sadness. Something that had been compressed for months under the weight of lawyers and paperwork and fear, and was now expanding in his chest like a breath he'd been holding for a very long time. Then Justice Hargrove looked at him. "Mr. Harper, I'd like to hear from you directly. In your own words, tell me why you believe your daughter should remain in your primary custody." Rebecca gave him a small nod. Daniel stood. His legs felt unsteady. His hands gripped the edge of the table. He looked at the judge, and for a moment, his mind went completely blank. Every rehearsed line, every careful phrase Rebecca had coached him on, vanished. So he didn't use them. He just talked. "Your Honor, I'm not going to tell you I'm the best father in the world. I'm not. I burn the pancakes most Sundays. I forget to sign permission slips. I once sent Lily to school with 2 different shoes because I was running late and I didn't notice." A small sound from somewhere in the courtroom. Almost a laugh. Almost. "But I'm there. Every morning, I'm there. Every night, I'm there. When she's sick, I'm the one sitting on the bathroom floor with her at 2 in the morning. When she had nightmares after the divorce, I'm the one who moved a sleeping bag into her room and slept on the floor for 3 weeks until she felt safe again." His voice cracked. He paused, swallowed, kept going. "I took a flight yesterday from the United States to be here today. The plane had a mechanical failure. The flight was canceled. I got on another plane, a different airline, economy seat, middle row. I haven't slept in almost 2 days. I haven't eaten a proper meal since Tuesday. And I would do all of it again, 10 times over, without hesitation, because my daughter needs to know that her father will always show up, no matter what." He looked at Catherine. She was staring at the table in front of her. Her hands were folded in her lap. She didn't look up. "Catherine is a good mother," Daniel said. "I've never said otherwise.
Lily loves her, and she should. But Lily's home is with me, not because I'm better, not because I have more to offer on paper, but because I'm the one she calls when she's scared. I'm the one she reads to at night. I'm the one she drew on that picture on the refrigerator. He stopped. His throat was tight. His eyes were burning. She drew 2 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one small. And underneath, in purple crayon, she wrote, "Me and Dad." That's not a legal argument, I know that. But it's the truth. And it's the only thing I have that no document, no study, no financial report can capture. He sat down. The courtroom was quiet. Justice Hargrove removed her glasses and set them on the bench. She looked at Daniel for a long time. Then she looked at Catherine. Then at both lawyers. "I'm going to recess for 30 minutes, she said. "When we reconvene, I'll have questions for both parties, and then I'll make my decision." She stood. The courtroom rose with her, and then she was gone, through a door behind the bench, and the room exhaled. Rebecca leaned over. "You did good, Daniel." He couldn't respond. His hands were shaking. His eyes were wet. He pressed his palms flat against the table and focused on breathing. 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, a woman he'd never met before today would decide whether his daughter stayed with him or moved across an ocean. He closed his eyes and saw Lily's face, the way she'd looked at him in the truck 3 days ago. Those serious eyes, that quiet trust. "You'll come back?" "Always." He opened his eyes and waited. The 30 minutes felt like 30 hours. Daniel sat at the table with his hands flat on the wood, staring at a knot in the grain directly in front of him. Rebecca sat beside him, reviewing notes, jotting things in the margin of her legal pad, occasionally touching his arm to remind him she was there. Across the aisle, Catherine sat with Jeffrey Hale. They were whispering. Daniel didn't try to hear what they were saying. He didn't want to know. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. A text from his mother. "Lily asked about you this morning. I told her you were taking care of something important. She said to tell you she made you a new drawing. She wouldn't show me what it is. Said it's a surprise for when you get home." Daniel read it 3 times. Then he put the phone away and pressed his hand against his chest, over his heart, the way he'd done on the plane. A reflex now. A way of holding himself together when the seams were threatening to come apart. The bailiff appeared at the door. "Court is reconvening. All parties, please take your seats." Daniel stood. His legs felt hollow. Rebecca gathered her papers, straightened her jacket, and gave him one look. Not reassuring, not optimistic, just steady. The look of a woman who had done this hundreds of times and who understood that the next 20 minutes would either be the best or worst of Daniel Harper's life, and that there was nothing more she could do about it. They sat. Justice Hargrove entered from the door behind the bench. The courtroom rose and then settled as she took her seat. She placed a single sheet of paper in front of her, put her glasses on, and looked out at both tables. "Before I issue my ruling, I have a few questions. Mr. Hale, you've presented Mrs. Harper's relocation as offering superior educational and social opportunities for the child. Can you speak to the transition plan? Specifically, how would Lily's relationship with her father be maintained if primary custody is transferred to her mother in London?" Jeffrey Hale stood. "Your Honor, Mrs. Harper is fully committed to facilitating a strong relationship between Lily and her father. We're proposing regular video calls, holiday visitation periods, and extended summer stays in the United States. Mr. Harper would have full access during those periods." "Holiday visitation and summer stays," Justice Hargrove repeated. She didn't inflect the words, but something in the way she said them made the room feel colder. "So the proposal is that a 9-year-old girl who currently sees her father every day would transition to seeing him during school breaks and over a video screen? With respect, Your Honor, the quality of the time is more important than... I'm aware of the arguments around quality versus quantity, Mr. Hale. Thank you. She turned to Daniel's side. Miss Sloan, Mr. Harper testified that he works extended hours. If custody remains with him, what is the daily care arrangement for Lily during his working hours? Rebecca stood. Lily is in school from 8 to 3. Mr. Harper's mother, Margaret Harper, provides after-school care until Daniel returns from work, typically by 5:30. On the occasions when overtime is required, Margaret stays later. Lily has been in this arrangement for the past 2 years and has thrived in it. Her school reports, which are included in our submission, show strong academic performance and positive social development. And the overtime? Is that ongoing? No, Your Honor. The overtime was specific to funding this legal process. Mr. Harper's supervisor has confirmed in writing that his standard schedule is 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and that flexible arrangements are available when needed. Justice Hargrove nodded slowly. She made a note. Then she looked at Catherine. Mrs. Harper, I'd like to hear from you. Catherine stood. She was composed. Her hands were still. Her voice was clear. But Daniel could see something in the way she held her shoulders. A tightness, a guardedness, that told him she was more nervous than she appeared. Your Honor, I love my daughter. Everything I've done, the move, the new position, the life I've built here, it's all been with her best interests in mind. I believe London offers her opportunities she simply won't have in Ohio. Better schools, cultural exposure, a broader worldview. And my husband James is a wonderful man who cares for Lily deeply. How long has Lily known your husband? They've met several times over the past year. Video calls, holiday visits when Lily came to stay with me. So they've met several times, over a year. Justice Hargrove paused. Mrs. Harper, I want to ask you something directly. In your petition, you describe Mr. Harper as a loving but limited father. Can you explain what you mean by limited? Catherine hesitated. For the first time, her composure flickered. I meant that Daniel's resources are limited. His ability to provide certain opportunities. I understand the financial argument. I've read it thoroughly. I'm asking about something else. In your view, is Daniel Harper a good father? The courtroom went very quiet. Catherine looked at the table, then at her lawyer. Then, for the first time since the proceedings began, at Daniel. Their eyes met. And in that moment, something passed between them that had nothing to do with lawyers or legal strategy or courtroom theater. It was older than all of that. It was the residue of a marriage that had failed, but had produced one thing of infinite value. And they both knew it. Yes, Catherine said quietly. Daniel is a good father. Then help me understand, Justice Hargrove said, why you believe it serves Lily's best interests to reduce her daily contact with a father you acknowledge is good, in favor of opportunities that, while valuable, can be supplemented in other ways. Geoffrey Hale started to stand. Your Honor, if I may. You may not, Mr. Hale. I'm speaking to Mrs. Harper. Catherine's mouth opened, then closed. She looked down at her hands. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. I want what's best for her. That's all I've ever wanted. I believe you, Justice Hargrove said. I believe both of you want what's best for your daughter. That's what makes this case difficult. This isn't a case of neglect or abuse or parental unfitness. This is a case of two people who love the same child and disagree about where she should grow up. She paused and removed her glasses. I've been doing this for a long time, and in my experience, the most important factor in a child's well-being
is not the size of the house, or the ranking of the school, or the number of extracurricular activities available within a 10-mile radius. The most important factor is the consistency and presence of the people who love them. Daniel stopped breathing. Mr.
Harper flew across an ocean to be in this courtroom. His plane was grounded due to a mechanical failure. He found another flight, on another airline, in economy class. And he arrived this morning with less than 3 hours of sleep, because he understood that being here was not optional, that showing up was not optional. She looked at Daniel. That tells me something that no financial statement or school ranking can tell me. It tells me that this is a father who will not quit, who will not be absent, who will do whatever it takes, however hard it is, however exhausted he is, to be there for his child. Daniel's vision blurred. He blinked rapidly and gripped the edge of the table. It is the ruling of this court that primary custody of Lillian Harper shall remain with her father, Daniel James Harper, in the state of Ohio. The words hit him like a wave, not a crash, a wave. The kind that lifts you off your feet and holds you suspended for a moment, before setting you gently back down. Rebecca exhaled beside him, a sharp, controlled breath that she'd been holding for longer than she would ever admit. Mrs. Harper will retain generous visitation rights, including school holidays, alternating major holidays, and an extended period during summer break. The court encourages both parties to work cooperatively to ensure Lily maintains a strong relationship with her mother. The specifics of the visitation schedule will be finalized within 30 days. Justice Hargrove put her glasses back on and looked at both tables. I want to say one more thing, and I'm saying it to both of you. This child did not choose any of this. She didn't choose the divorce. She didn't choose the relocation. She didn't choose to be the subject of a legal proceeding. What she deserves, from both of you, is the assurance that she is loved fully and unconditionally by two parents who are capable of putting her needs above their own. I trust that you will both honor that. She gathered her papers. Court is adjourned. The room stood. Justice Hargrove exited. And then it was over. Daniel didn't move. He sat at the table, both hands gripping the wood, his shoulders shaking. Not sobbing, not breaking down, just trembling. The kind of trembling that happens when a body that has been running on fear and adrenaline for 2 straight days finally receives the news it was terrified it would never hear. Rebecca put her hand on his back. You did it, Daniel. He couldn't speak. He shook his head, then nodded, then shook his head again, and somewhere between the two gestures, a single tear rolled down his cheek and landed on the table. I need to call my mom, he said. His voice was hoarse, broken in the best possible way. Go. I'll handle the paperwork. He stood, pushed through the courtroom doors, and walked into the hallway. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the phone. He leaned against the wall and dialed. His mother answered on the second ring. Daniel? Mom. One word. That was all he could manage, but she heard everything in it. Oh, sweetheart, you got her? I got her, Mom. She's staying with me. The sound his mother made was something between a laugh and a cry, a sound that contained 63 years of living and loving and worrying about her son and her granddaughter and every terrible thing that could have happened, but didn't. Oh, thank God. Oh, Daniel, thank God. Can you put her on? Is she there? She's right here. She just got home from school. Hold on. A rustling. Footsteps. The sound of a phone being passed from one hand to another. Dad? Lily's voice hit him like sunlight, like oxygen, like the first warm day after a winter that had lasted too long. Hey, baby. Grandma's crying. Why is Grandma crying?
He laughed. It came out wet and ragged and completely involuntary. She's happy, Lil. She's crying because she's happy. That's weird. Yeah, it is. Dad, when are you coming home? Tomorrow. I'm catching a flight tonight, and I'll be home tomorrow morning. Will you be here when I wake up? I will be there when you wake up. I promise. Okay. Dad? Yeah? I made you a new drawing. It's better than the last one. There's a dog in this one. He pressed his hand over his eyes. We don't have a dog, Lil. I know, but maybe we should get one. I drew it already, so it's basically decided. He laughed again, harder this time. The kind of laugh that comes from the very bottom of a place that has been dark for a very long time and is suddenly, unexpectedly, full of light. We'll talk about it when I get home. That means yes. That means we'll talk about it. That means yes. Grandma, he said yes. He could hear his mother in the background, still crying, still laughing, telling Lily that's not what he said, while Lily insisted that it absolutely was. He leaned against the wall and let the sound of them wash over him. His mother, his daughter, the two people who made up the entire architecture of his life. Still there, still together, still his. He hung up eventually. He didn't remember saying goodbye. The conversation just ended the way conversations with Lily always ended. Abruptly, cheerfully, in the middle of a sentence about something unrelated. She'd been telling him about a caterpillar she found at recess. He smiled at the phone for a long time after the screen went dark. He was still standing in the hallway when Catherine came through the courtroom doors. She stopped when she saw him. They were 10 feet apart. Her lawyer was behind her, already on his phone, already moving on to the next case. But Catherine stood still. Daniel looked at her. He didn't feel triumph. He didn't feel vindication. He felt the particular sadness that comes from winning something in a place where winning means someone else lost. And the someone else was a woman he'd once loved, who was standing in a courthouse hallway in London with the knowledge that her daughter would be growing up an ocean away. Catherine. She looked at him. Her eyes were red. Her composure, the polished, controlled exterior that had held firm through the entire hearing, was gone. She looked exactly the way she'd looked the night she told him she was leaving. Exhausted, conflicted, carrying something too heavy for one person. I'm not going to fight you on the visitation, Daniel said. Whatever schedule the court sets, I'll make sure she's available. Every holiday, every summer. You call her whenever you want. I won't get in the way of that. Catherine's chin trembled. Daniel. She needs her mother. I've never said otherwise, and I'm going to make sure she has her mother in her life. Every single day, if that's what you want. Catherine pressed her hand to her mouth. She nodded. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she didn't wipe them away. Thank you, she whispered. She's our daughter, Catherine. She's not a trophy. She's not a win. She's a kid who loves both of us, and she deserves to keep doing that. Catherine nodded again. She took a breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked past him toward the exit. She didn't look back, but as she passed, her hand brushed his arm, lightly, briefly. A touch so quick it could have been accidental. It wasn't. Daniel watched her go. Then he turned and walked the other direction. He found Rebecca in the lobby, packing her briefcase. She looked up and studied his face. You okay? I think so. Yeah, I think I am. Good. Go home, Daniel. Go home and be with your daughter. He took the train back to Heathrow. He booked the evening flight, economy, middle seat, 7 hours and 45 minutes. He didn't care. The seat didn't matter. It had never really mattered. What mattered was where it was taking him.
He boarded the plane, found his row, and sat down. The woman next to him was reading a magazine. The man on the other side was already asleep. Daniel buckled his seatbelt and leaned his head back. His phone buzzed one final time before he switched it to airplane mode. An email. From an address he didn't recognize. He opened it. Mr. Harper, my name is Captain Alan Williams. I was the captain of Flight 2249, the aircraft you identified the hydraulic failure on last night. I've been flying commercial aircraft for 28 years. In that entire career, I have never had a passenger identify a critical mechanical fault that was missed during pre-flight inspection. The maintenance team's final report confirms that the leak in the primary hydraulic actuator for the left aileron had progressed to a level that posed a serious risk of partial control failure at altitude. I don't use the word hero lightly, and I know you probably wouldn't accept it. But I want you to know that 180 people went home to their families last night because you refused to be ignored. On behalf of my crew and every soul that was on that aircraft, thank you. I hope you got where you needed to go. Daniel read it once, then again. Then he closed the email and put the phone away. He thought about all the people who had tried to make him move. Karen Mitchell with her rehearsed smile. Grant Alcott with his blazer and his bourbon breath. The passengers who whispered. The crew who pressured. Every set of eyes that had looked at him and decided he didn't belong. And he thought about what would have happened if he'd agreed. If he'd taken the miles, accepted the downgrade, moved to the back of the plane like a man who knew his place. Seat 14C would have been empty, or occupied by someone who didn't know what hydraulic fluid looked like. The plane would have taken off, climbed to altitude, crossed the ocean, and maybe everything would have been fine. Maybe the leak was slow enough. Maybe the redundant systems would have held. Maybe the pilots would have managed. Or maybe not. He'd never know. And that was the mercy of it, the not knowing. The simple, terrible mercy of a disaster that didn't happen because one tired man in a wrinkled jacket looked out a window and refused to stay quiet. The plane pushed back from the gate. The engine spooled up. The captain came on the intercom with the standard greeting, the weather update, the estimated flight time. Daniel closed his eyes. He was going home. To a 2-bedroom rental that needed a new water heater. To a job that started at 6 in the morning. To a refrigerator with a stick figure drawing taped to the door. To Sunday pancakes that he'd probably burn again. To a 9-year-old girl with huge, serious eyes who was expecting him to walk through the door tomorrow morning. And to a new drawing with a dog in it. He smiled. For the first time in 3 days, he smiled. He was still smiling when the plane lifted off the runway and climbed into the evening sky, heading west, heading home, carrying a man who had done the only thing he'd ever known how to do. He showed up. He paid attention. He refused to move. And he kept his promise. That was enough. That had always been enough. Because Daniel Harper was never the kind of man who changed the world with power or money or influence. He was the kind of man who changed it by being exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what needed to be done, at exactly the moment it mattered most. And the world, whether it noticed or not, was better for it.